Hi, guys. Welcome back to the Purposeful Wisdom Podcast. My name is Dawn Christine. Thank you guys so much for being here today. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Hit that subscribe button below. Help me grow this channel. You guys know I bring the best of the best on this platform to help you guys grow and heal and learn and have more tools for your toolbox. That is the entire point of this podcast. So thank you guys for being here. Without further ado, I have the pleasure of welcoming Dr. Don St. John today to the program. Very early on in his educational career, Dr. St. John realized that the box of traditional clinical psychology and psychiatry was too small to hold all the tools and concepts needed for his healing. He's forever grateful he searched outside that box. Over time, he encountered not just tools and techniques, but different schools of thought, both novel and derived from wide-range sources. Decades of exploration led him to construct a view of healing, purpose, and human potential that includes four essential and interrelated components: the somatic, the psycho-emotional, the relational, and the spiritual. As a psychotherapist, teacher, author, and Mestre, teacher in the Christian-Ayahuasca Church, Dr. St. John has been immersed into the psychological, somatic, relational, and spiritual worlds for more than 50 years. As a child, he endured years of intense physical and verbal abuse in his Italian-American Catholic home. He entered adulthood in a physically hypertense body, emotionally frozen, relationally retarded, and spiritually void. This healing adventure of 50 plus years has resulted in a fulfilling marriage of 38 years to his life partner, the enjoyment of being in his body, trust in his own abilities and instincts, the trust given him by others to guide their journeys, a love for life, and a wonderment at a higher power. Welcome in, Don. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me, Dawn. I'm looking forward to spending this time with you today.
And I as well, off camera, I let you know, I can definitely relate to your story, Italian background, childhood background, pretty similar, so I'd love to start with you, if that's all right with you, at the beginning. I'd love for you to share your story with my audience of how you grew up and how that shaped you into your early adulthood and then now where you are. Can you share your story with us?
I'd be happy to. I'm not going to go into all the specifics of the traumas. Suffice it to say that my childhood had a lot of trauma throughout, beginning with birth. I almost died at birth, and it was pretty rough. There were very little expectations of me doing anything with my life. I wanted to be a professional prize fighter, but at some point I realized I didn't have the ability to do that. And so I went in the Air Force without, the vaguest idea of what I was going to do afterwards. And it was in the Air Force that I took my first college course. Hardly went to high school. I mean, my body did. My emotional life and my intellect stayed home, as my body proceeded through 4 years of high school. And then 2 days later, I joined the Air Force for 4 years. But while I was in, I took some courses with the University of Maryland's overseas program and discovered that I actually liked academic study. And so when I got out, I finished college at the University of South Florida in Tampa and went to graduate school from there. And about that time, I'd begun to realize how much help I needed. As you read in my biography there, I was, to sum it up and put it into very technical terms, I was a mess. just a mess. And, I drank a lot to get into fights. I didn't know what I wanted to do with myself or my life. Relationships were challenging. Sex was a mystery. I mean, adult life didn't make much sense yet to me. And as I was studying psychology, I realized that, they talk about the mind as if it exists in some vacuum somewhere. And they didn't even in those days talk too much about the brain and the nervous system. It was,
Right.
The psyche and the psychological. And now at least the brain and the nervous system is very much a part of the study of trauma, for example. But not back then, not back in the 60s, in the mid-late 60s. And I realized that the body had to be included. And that started me on a pursuit that's continued to this day. And I came to realize that I needed a whole lot of education in the area of relationships. And spirituality is an important part, in my opinion. Spirituality is an important part of being human, an important part of feeling whole, because we're as connected above as we are below. And it's important to be connected to the earth and everything that is of the earth, okay? And to connect it up above, to the higher vibrations of our being, if you will, or spirit, or God, or the universe, or whatever word you want to give to an influence that's beyond our separate self.
Right. Wow. No, that's incredible. And I completely agree with you, because I think once you have that in play and you know that you're not separate from it, that opens up a whole new world for you, especially when you're healing from trauma, because you were taught a bunch of belief systems. You were taught things that you now know, looking back in your journey, that weren't necessarily true, but again, at your time of struggle and especially when we're younger, we're told to believe what we hear, so that becomes a belief in us, and we are our thoughts, and then our thoughts shape our world, so it's this domino effect. And I think without spirituality, and know that we are connected, and us as humans on this planet are all connected, we are all connected somehow, that opens up a whole new door for the healing process.
Completely. One of the things that it does is it helps us to realize that we're not alone. And that's huge, because one of the consequences of pretty much any level of trauma, and maybe later I'll talk about the various categories that I've come up with to look at how we're affected by different kinds of situations and events and experiences throughout our childhood. But for now, to say that one of the consequences is we feel alone, and we believe that we really can't talk to anybody about our deepest fears and feelings of inadequacy, things like that. And you said we come to believe what we're taught, and it's important, for your listeners to understand that often it's not directly taught.
Right.
People don't say you're not a worthwhile little boy or little girl. They just treat you as if you know, that
Yep. It's the
you're not with
actions.
what? The actions.
Yep.
And yeah, and so then we have to overcome that. We have to recognize that we came to those beliefs out of experience. There are a couple things in there. One, we came to those beliefs out of our experience. And two, we're left feeling like there's nothing we can do about it. We
Yeah.
feel like, that's the way it is. We're victims. And we don't realize, and hopefully eventually we do, because it's a key, that we are the story writers. Even though these events may be brutal, and I've had some brutal events in my childhood, and anyone would come to the same conclusions, most anyone. Okay, so it's a very delicate topic to say that I was still the one writing the story.
Absolutely. Because it's an aha moment. I know for me it was an aha moment because when you are made to feel, and again, I love how you point that out, that it's not directly, sometimes it is. I know instances in my life, words hurt hands down, and words were said to me in my younger years that really stuck. And I'm like, ooh, and it became a belief for me. But often, many of them were through action that put something into my head that made me believe I was not worthy in some way, shape,
Exactly.
and form, right? And then you grow up and you believe this, and through that, you feel a loss of empowerment. You feel powerless. You feel like, okay, well, if this is what everybody else is subliminally telling me, it must be true. And it becomes your new belief system. And then you act through that belief system that's now in your subconscious, and you give up. You feel powerless, you feel worthless, you feel like you have no control of your life. And then you get that aha moment, and you're like, whoa, I've had the power all along. I've been empowered all along because I'm connected and I'm a light being and I am with source. And when that switch flips,
The
it's
world
empowerment that I've
flips.
never felt in my life, like hands down.
Yep.
Was it the same way for you? Like, did you have that aha moment when the it flipped for you and you're like, whoa?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's that moment. And it is like a switch being flipped, because all of a sudden you realize that you do have the power to change. And another thing for people to understand is that there are resources available. There's so many different resources. What it depends on is your wanting to find them. If you want to find the resources to support you in becoming, see, for me, Dawn, healing isn't about eliminating the symptoms and returning to some mythical normal, because it
Right,
doesn't exist. It just
right.
doesn't. Healing is about developing all the various aspects of myself. It's about letting go of beliefs and behaviors and thoughts and feelings that don't support me. It's about a continual, never ending process of growth until
Yes.
it's time to shed this form. We can continue to grow, to learn emotionally, spiritually, relationally, intellectually, even physically. And that's what healing is about. The resources are available, but they take the intention to find them and action to do something about it, to look, to read, to study, you know.
I agree.
To,
And I love the way you frame that too, because, you know, healing is a never ending journey. It's not like you're going to wake up one morning and then all of a sudden you're going to forget your trauma. You're going to forget everything that happened in your life. What you do have the choice is to detach from it and understand that you are not your trauma. You are not the same person that you were back when that was. And now you have a conscious choice to whether still continue in that vicious cycle or decide to change your circumstances by getting the help that you deserve. Because I truly feel we all deserve to heal. We all in this world have been through some sort of traumatic event in our lives. And what my trauma looks like may not look like what your trauma looks like, but nonetheless, trauma is trauma. Verbal, physical, a combination of both. It could be sexual. Trauma is trauma, but we all deserve to heal. We all deserve to feel whole within our bodies and not carry the trauma either. And
yeah,
I would love for you to get into that with me because I know that you have these four components that you have built your healing around: the somatic, the psycho-emotional, the relational, and the spiritual. How did that influence your healing journey, or what foundation did that give you to move forward from your trauma?
okay, I want to begin answering by commenting on something that you said. And when you said we all have trauma of one kind or another, and you know, there's the big T, capital T trauma, where you know someone is hit by a truck, for example, or a mugging, a rape, sexual assault, uh, you know, that overwhelming experience, wartime trauma, things of that nature. Then there's the small t trauma, like, for example, being constantly criticized, like having your parents, you know, not like each other, fighting all the time, and then divorcing when you're 5 years old. Uh, that's kind of borderline. It gets, you know, between that
Right.
small and big T. There are a number of situations in that area, and then there are life negating messages that we find in even the nicest households that, for example, don't celebrate our sexuality, don't
Right.
celebrate our ability to stand up for ourselves, look our parents in the eyes and say, wait a minute, I don't agree with you. No,
Right.
I will obey, but I don't agree, you know, to have that autonomy. Like, I call that like a life negating message. And even below that is just general ignorance. People not
Yeah.
knowing what life is about, you know? It's not about accumulating toys until you die, you know? It's about becoming whole. So I believe that in complete agreement with what you said, Dawn, we all have it. That's important because that's what we're here to do.
Right.
That's the stuff out of which we make the gold of our lives.
Agree.
If we take that perspective, to not be ashamed, to not be embarrassed, to not be afraid to face it and work with it.
Guys, I think we're having some technical issues here on Don's part, so bear with me while the feed hopefully jumps back in here because we were on to something, y'all. All right,
Okay.
guys, we fixed everything. We're gonna jump right back in here because I'm raw and real, and y'all know that I don't edit anything.
Okay. So what I was saying is if we're willing to face those wounds, if we're willing to accept the frame that we are here to become whole, that's what we're here to do, to become fully human, again, connected above, below, connected with each other, with the capacity to love and to act and to receive. If we can accept that frame, then we can face those challenges. For example, let's say a person has some sexual abuse in their history, and it's a delicate area, it's a vulnerable
Of course.
area. Well, what that affords is the possibility for them to develop an extraordinary ability to communicate about their sexual experience and needs and desires with their partner, to achieve a level of communication that's extraordinary.
Right.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
our
And
wounds are where the gold is.
right. But I think a lot of people, because the ego comes in at that point, because again, we're made to believe that, to not talk about the hard stuff, that it's embarrassing. And that's when the ego kind of comes in and we're afraid, because humans are we're fear-based. Like let's just call a spade a spade. So the outside world, the influences of the outside world often affect how we show up in relationships. We're often scared to be that vulnerable because we don't want to be judged by our partners. So how do we even open up something like that level of communication with someone to allow this other person to come into your world and say, you know what? I didn't have the best childhood. This is what kind of happened to me, and show vulnerability.
Yeah, I think, I have an expression that can be helpful. If we begin to engage those difficult conversations, we will sweat. No
Oh
question
yeah.
about it. We'll sweat, armpits will get wet, shake a little bit maybe. But if we avoid them, we'll suffer.
Oh yeah.
And so, remembering that and taking this step, knowing its importance and aiming in that direction, starting with little ones, like
So what did that
when you
look like
jot
for
it down.
you? So what did that look like for you, Don? Like, so when you were, because I know you're in a beautiful relationship now,
Yeah.
38 years, which is absolutely unheard of nowadays. So I think that's amazing. What did that look like for you to share your story with your partner, and how did you, use that framework to now become even more close in your relationship? What did that even look like for you?
Well, I think it happens in stages. So initially, for example, when my feelings got hurt, I'd get mad. Okay. And then I learned intellectually that getting mad when your feelings get hurt means you're not willing to own and express your vulnerability. Like, okay.
Right.
So it became a process of, at first I'd still get mad, but then I'd stop and say, wait a minute, okay. Now it might be 20 minutes later, then 10 minutes later, and 5 minutes,
Right.
slowly getting to that point where in instead of getting mad, I could say, ouch.
Right. Awareness
Yeah,
too. And
and practice.
especially when you grow up in a hypersensitive world, is as a child, we're in that hypersensitive mode, so everything feels huge for people that have suffered through a traumatic experience in life. So I've often find myself too, even today, I'm still a work in progress, and I openly admit it on this channel. There are things that I am super hypersensitive to, that my brain automatically will go there, to the place that I don't want it to go. Oh, is it me? Because that was a belief system in my brain for so long. I'm the problem. I'm the bad thing. I'm the this, I'm the that. And now I find myself doing that, and I pause and I'm aware of it. And I'm like, like, we're not going there. You are good. You are whole. You are good just the way you are. You are created in God's image. You are the light. You are the I am. So it's like shifting that mindset of catching it and being aware of it, so that way you don't hold on to that, because then you're just going to go down that rabbit hole again. And I mean, healing is a never ending journey. It's a never ending process. And I feel that becoming aware of it and catching it before it even affects us as the trifecta, mind, body, spirit, is key too.
Yeah, I agree. It's an ongoing process, and yet I think it's what we're here to do. And and I called it in my book, the subtitle of my book is An Adventure of a Lifetime. You know,
It is.
because there's so many rewards. For example, Dawn, I'm 80 years old, and
You don't look it.
I know, I know. And I'm glad you said that. And and it's part of this journey to understand what the body is. Okay? For example, we think of the body as a thing. The word itself, the body, is a third person. Okay, grammatically speaking, it's a third person word. It's the body. And what most of us have not yet learned is that there's an inside. There's our experience of the body. There's our connection to the body, our sensations, our feelings, our movement, the feedback that we receive, and to evolve that, I think, is part of the process that most of the culture is still not aware of. And there are a number of places where this is really important. One of them is, the more we're in touch, the easier it is to let go. Because when something triggers us, our tissues just restrict.
Right.
They react with a level of tension. Okay. And sometimes that's below our awareness. So the body gets tighter, but we're not aware of it. And sometimes, even if we are aware of it, it's hard to let it go. So that's one area where developing our connection to our body facilitates our healing process.
I
And
agree with that. I agree with that wholeheartedly. What advice would you give to someone that's experiencing this in their bodies, where they're triggered and all of a sudden you're aware of it, you feel it in your body? Because let's face it, most of us feel it in our stomachs, we feel it in our shoulders, we feel the tension in our body. I read a book many years ago, The Body Keeps the Score, which is phenomenal to me. It made me truly understand how the body holds on to our traumas. And, what would you say to someone that's holding on to such traumas in their body, or are triggered? what are some things or tools that they can do to release that from their body?
I would say that there's a world to enter, and it's the whole field of somatics. And for example, there's a discipline called continuum. And continuum is an exploration as a fluid system. You may have heard that the body is approximately 70% liquid.
Yep.
You've heard that?
Oh yeah.
Well, think about it. How does liquid move?
Flows.
It flows. So learning to flow. So, you know, I would urge your listeners to look this up, get involved with it, find it, because I am 80 years old and I teach continuum workshops, teaching a bunch of 40-year-olds how to move fluidly. Right? Yeah, it brings quite a smile to your face. It's a funny concept. My wife does too. A couple of 80-year-olds out there getting on the floor, teaching people, young people, relatively speaking, how to move like an octopus.
I don't find it funny. I find it fascinating because I've always, even as a little girl, I've always looked up to the older generations because I feel that there's so much wisdom there. They've been there, they've done it, they know. And hence the reason why my podcast is called Purposeful Wisdom, because I think we all have stories to share. And if we are open-minded and optimistic, we can learn from all generations, all of us. We can learn from the millennials. We can learn something from the Gen Zers. We can learn from each other and grow and take different perspectives and different opinions and, you know, put those tools in our toolboxes to learn and grow as an individual. So I think it's beautiful that you're teaching I don't find it funny at all. I think it's fascinating how you're
Yeah,
teaching people of my generation. I'm 42, and you know,
yeah,
we're in this area of life right now where I feel a lot of us are waking up. And I know a lot of us use that term waking up, but it's true. We're starting to understand how we are all connected, how we can learn and grow from each other. We're entertaining the thought of being more optimistic and going beyond the box, that it's not just a black and white world anymore. There are things and healing modalities that are way outside there that people would never think back then to implement into their holistic lifestyle. Breathing techniques, for instance. I'm a firm believer, Don, that we have the capability of healing our bodies without medicine, without all these prescription drugs. Like, the mind is such an incredible thing, and we could heal ourselves. We can heal our traumas, our wounds, our physical, diseases because of that connection. And I think more and more people are waking up to that and realizing that nowadays.
absolutely. Let me tell you a story. When I was
Please.
59 years old, I had a major heart attack.
Ooh.
And, it was a consequence of how I lived in the first 30 years of my life. I was practically born smoking. Right? And, for example, and didn't consider nutrition at all. A good breakfast was the banana cream pie, followed by an apple pie and a lot of coffee at 10 years old. So, I had a heart attack. And to make a long story really short, they said that part of my heart was gone, that would never return,
Oh,
the apex. And they said, that's a serious risk factor for
yeah.
a second heart attack. It's a very vulnerable situation. Uh, 3 months later, I went back for a test, and the next day, the cardiologist called me and said, "Got to get you in for another test because the one we did yesterday is saying that your heart's perfectly normal." And that cannot be because I don't, it was good. Well, it's perfectly normal. So
Wow.
that occurred, you know. So how would you explain it? There are three answers that I come up with. One is, well, strange things happen. Two, somebody up there likes me. Three, the overall organization and fluidity of my body, because I'd been attending to it through these various modalities that I write about in my book. For years, I've been attending to my body, and the overall organization and fluidity was enough to overcome that disorganizing effect of the heart attack. So,
Right.
you know,
Wow, that's amazing. Well, and that's just proof that it's just proof exactly backing up what we both just said. It's just
yep,
how amazing the
exactly,
body really is.
exactly. So, yeah, that's why I urge people to consider their body as important as their psyche, as their relationships, as important as their spirituality. Consider them all. Those are the four things that I've talked about, you know?
I agree with that. I agree. It's a trifecta. It's an even flow of mind, body, spirit, because and I truly believe it starts here. This is the key to everything that flows. Because if we get a negative thought, that's going to affect the body. If we have and vibration, I'm a huge believer on vibration too. What energy goes where energy flows, that's the saying. So if you're thinking negative thoughts and you're in this mind frame of the woe is me stage, or I'm never going to get through this, or anything negative, vibrationally you're at a lower frequency, which does evolve into disease and effects of the body. If you're in a higher vibration and you're thinking positive and you're in that flow, so to speak, no disease, healing, natural healing. It just makes sense. It's just common sense to me. And it's so easy, because then I think a lot of people are like, well, it can't be that easy. Well, yeah, it can. Because why are we trying to we've been fed complicated stuff our whole lives for a collective. There's, it's fear-based, it's all these things. There's a pill for this, there's a pill for that. You're anxious, take this. No, I think it's so simple that's why it's often missed. Don't you? I
Yeah,
mean, what do you?
I agree with you that it's simple, and I don't think it's easy because
No, it's not easy.
the force of our habits is really challenging to overcome. It's simple conceptually, raise
Right.
your vibration, take care of yourself, realize that it has so much to do with the relationship to ourselves, to our body, to our psyche, to each other, to the divine. It's all relationship. And that's a shift. I don't think the world has reached that level, let's call it that level of vibration as a whole.
No,
You know, I think
it
it's in
hasn't.
process, but boy, you know, it
It's
looks like it go either
wishy-washy.
way.
Right. I mean, this country is divided more than ever right now. And as a person that is on the other side of the fear, the hate, I'm definitely a person of light and love. And ever since I was a little girl, I've been good. I've tried to see the good in the world. Even in the crappiest situations in my life, I've always found the light. I've always, even if it was dim, I would find the light. because it was my drive, it was my passion to keep going, that there is good in this world and there are good people, and good always wins. And I still believe that at 42. I truly believe that good will always outdo evil in this world. And I would want nothing more than, as a collective, for this world to come together and heal, because there's so many of us that deserve that and that yearn for that. And if we could put our differences aside, our opinions aside, and take the ego out of the game completely, and not be so judgmental and harsh and hurtful with our words, and just allow people to be themselves authentically, this world could shift on a dime. I truly believe that. And until we get to that point in our lives where we have that mindset, it's going to always be divided.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I wish about 7 billion people had that same hope, you know?
You have to have hope, though, because without hope, what do you have? And just like healing, when I first started my healing journey, all I had was hope. I didn't have a belief system in play. I couldn't love myself, because heck, I didn't even like myself because of the belief system I endured as a child. So all I had was hope. And I think, and now that I've implemented those tools that I needed to process my trauma, process my healing, and continue to show up for myself every day and be the best version of myself, whatever that looks like for me. Because there's good and bad. It's not rainbows and unicorns. You're going to have those negative thoughts come in your head. You're going to, be down on some days, and you're going to, have that kind of life's day sometimes. It's just, we're humans. We're having a human experience, but it's what you do about it. And if you're gonna let that overcome you, or you're gonna stand up to it and recognize it and make yourself aware of it and then shift it. So it's about perspective, I feel.
Yeah, I agree. I couldn't agree more. I
Dom,
think what you said earlier about everybody having trauma or everyone having wounds of various kinds, if we could, as a culture, recognize the truth of that statement, and further recognize that that's an of course, that's the human condition, and the journey to healing is what we're on this earth to do. And it's not, about putting band-aids on or taking pills to get rid of systems. It's about becoming full, loving, strong, receptive, assertive, creative, intelligent human beings.
well said. Well said. Don, I'd love for you to share with my audience where they can get your book, because I know it wasn't in your bio, but the title of your book is called Healing the Wounds of Childhood and Culture, An Adventure of a Lifetime. Where can listeners get your book? Because I think this is so crucial for people to have, and read and just have more tools for their toolbox.
Yeah, I agree. I think my book helps people understand, many people don't understand why they have challenges in their lives, like anxiety or relationship distress or chronic illness. They assume their childhood was like everyone else's, normal, quote unquote. And yeah, and they don't know. And one of the things my book does is it clarifies how those situations, how those challenges occur and the origins. So And then it talks about all four of these areas and goes into details of the resources that are available. They can get it on Amazon. Amazon that's the simplest. They can order it at their bookstores. They can go to my website, get it there. So not hard to get. And of course, what I love about Amazon is, a couple of clicks and it's on its way.
2
And
days.
a day or two later, it's
Yeah.
in your mailbox. So, yeah.
Don, I can't thank you enough for just being in this space with me today and sharing your insights and teaching us some purposeful wisdom of your own. Like, I'm so fortunate to have you in this space today. What is your website for my viewers that are listening on Spotify? Where can they find you?
www.pathsofconnection.com.
Love it.
PATHS of connection.com.
Awesome. Don, I can't thank you enough for being here today.
My
Thank you so,
pleasure,
so
Dawn.
much. Guys, thank you so much for watching this episode. Don't forget to subscribe. Share this with someone that you feel could use this information. That's what this is all about. I love you guys to death. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you on the next episode. Be well, guys.